What is nuclear power? Nuclear power is the energy that is released when you either split or combine atoms. Nuclear fusion is the process of combining atoms. Nuclear fission is the process of splitting an atom's nucleus. Fission is the most commonly used source of nuclear power today. The element whose atoms we split to attain nuclear power is known as uranium, number 92 on the periodic table. Nuclear energy is cheap and efficient, and it can keep cities lit and functional. Unfortunately, uranium is a limited resource, and nuclear power creates toxic waste, which takes thousands of years to degrade. As you can imagine, the merits and detriments of nuclear power is a big topic, and it needs to be discussed by everybody. So we figured, why not host a citizen science cafe?
Macaulay Seminar 3, which is the Science and Technology of New York, we talked about informal learning, which is teaching people science, but in a more relaxed environment, and where they don't feel like they're being force-fed information, or they don't feel, oh, I have to get a good grade for this. Instead, we decided to do a citizen science cafe because you have group discussion, you have different points of views, and those points of views can lead to more aspects of the science that you weren't thinking about before.
And so, with a little help from free food, we got some students in the door, and then we got them talking. Afterwards, we sat a couple students down to give their impressions of the event.
I'm Matthew DePrizio, I'm 17, and I attend LaGuardia High School.
My name is Medina Masheva, I'm 19 years old, and I go to Macaulay Honors at Brooklyn College.
But first, we debriefed our participants with an overview of nuclear power.
Control room over here. Control rooms are important because nuclear power has to be monitored constantly for it to remain safe.
Followed by a discussion of the pros and cons.
What do you guys think are some advantages to having of nuclear power?
I guess it releases a lot of energy very quickly.
And it can be cost efficient if used for a large enough metropolitan area as opposed to using fossil fuels.
Cons?
I think we're seeing it with the Fukushima reactor. Like, I don't know how true this is, but apparently the Pacific Ocean's water supply is being poisoned by nuclear emissions right now.
Because of the huge half-life of uranium, like, we can't just wait for it to pass away. We'd have to like wait an extended period of time to actually wait for it to actually dissipate.
So we screened the documentary. And then we opened up our main discussion.
Yeah.
Is there like a working model somewhere in the world for safe nuclear energy? Like, where there's like checks and balances that almost guarantee that it can never backfire.
You guys have seen like what happened with Chernobyl, right? Like there's like some weird stuff going on over there, and like that in itself is like huge scare, and it's like if we do have like one of those attacks on a nuclear power plant, like that's gonna be huge.
Recently in Japan, they had another one this year, a leak in nuclear power, but a lot of it has to do with how much you keep your nuclear power points in check. So.
It's kind of like a bank, like it's not all banks are going to be secure like that, but essentially most nuclear power plants are built to be like contain whatever they have, like the uranium rods that they have, contain it with like the highest levels of security. And even with that, in order to keep like radiation from spreading and things like that, or like people from coming in, they have like layers and layers and layers of security and layers of like covering to keep it contained within. So like most nuclear power plants are safe.
To say that, oh, it's fine if it's near your school, if a nuclear power plant is near your school, is a little bit excessive, because you're still going to get some of that side radiation because the reaction is still going to be happening, right?
Yeah.
So to that extent, it's not going to be safe.
The nuclear power plant itself is encased, like the walls, they're heavily encased by lead, which kind of contains most of the radiation. I'm not really sure all of them, but I'm pretty sure like it's pretty safe.
It wasn't where the guy was. He used
he
took the readings, and they were like 4 times the amount.
Wasn't that the mine?
No, that was the actual.
plant.
It was an actual plant, and he was there, and it was like there were other cars parked there.
Well, either way, if it's not present in our society now, over the long term, like there's definitely going to be developmental problems in children of people that did live or work near those plants.
Like the idea of like setting up a nuclear power plant, it does like when you think about it, like the reason why we wouldn't like go towards is because of the fear of the unknown. A lot of people don't know what it is, and the media portrays it as like something that's really dangerous in the first place. But then if you do consider the consequences of like air pollution and nuclear waste, the consequences does result in like human beings like dying eventually from cancer or some kind of diseases.
I feel like if they take care of waste, like get rid of all the other waste that we produce, then they just probably put it underground.
Right. Well, that's what happens in Finland. That was another possible documentary.
I mean, like, all the
They
waste
actually
that
do
we
put it
produce.
underground,
Yeah.
but then it would contaminate groundwater.
Yeah. So we're just
But
burying
not
it
just
underground.
radioactive waste,
I don't
all
think-
waste. Everything that you put into the trash. You know, when the truck comes by, picks up all the trash from everybody in the city. They put it in a landfill.
But
Right.
that's why it's recycling has become such a big program. Like it's because we want to limit all that amount of trash being produced in general.
It does impact the lives of many people in terms of mining, not alone just the facilities that produce the nuclear energy.
All of the participants at the cafe were very forthcoming with their responses, and they were unafraid to voice their opinions. The informal environment was comfortable and natural.
So I thought it was actually really well done in terms of like how many people talked and who got to talk, and even like the sense of interruptions that wasn't really there.
I felt it was nice to hear everybody's opinion on the matter, hear different perspectives, and I enjoyed that.
It's not a question of like if we're gonna need to use it, but like when. When are we gonna use it all up?
The main issue isn't with uranium running up. The main problem is with all the yellow cake that's produced as byproduct waste and the tailings that are thus produced in the end that go into oceans and stuff and cause contamination. That's the real issue. Why would you use like these type of like resources and
Well,
stuff?
it gives you a lot of energy for very little.
Yes.
You have very little uranium, and then you can run a lot of buildings, for example.
But now we're having this problem where it's like it's running out, like by like 2050 or something, or 2015, and like there's gonna come a point where it's like uranium is gonna start running out, and then what do you do then?
We all want everything to be powered by natural things like wind and solar power, or what vegetable oil or things like that. I mean, like
Yeah.
that's great and fine because there's no carbon footprint on the environment. But in terms of practicality, that can't power a city full of millions of people. It just can't.
It's not an issue of like we need this energy to like live right now. It's an issue of like how long can we live healthily and sustain our environment. If we actually release all of that waste that we get from nuclear energy into our environment, there might not be an environment left. Ashley's question was really thought-provoking, and like no one had a definite concrete answer or a way to like even approach that type of question.
We've been looking at a lot of the health issues with nuclear energy as an energy source, but like we kind of ignored like more the political side of it. I feel like the promotion of nuclear energy in our society, I feel like that would cause another sort of like Cold War situation. I feel like countries are going to start competing to create the best nuclear power plants, and I feel like that could just create a lot of tension between countries that already have a lot of issues with nuclear weapons.
It's obviously going to be like a fear issue, but it's going to come down to who is the person in power. And even right now, there's a quota on how many nuclear weapons you can have, especially if you're part of the UN.
Just the fact that the international community sets up like a hierarchy of who gets to decide it, that's really interesting to me.
I also like know that like some countries they do like want the nuclear power, like let's say the bombs and things like that, just for as like a political reason, like they want to seem like greater than other countries, things like that. Like I know a friend was telling me how like Pakistan was like building nuclear bombs just for that purpose. They wanted to like they're always like competing with like let's say India, and like you know those two are going head to head.
I was reading an article recently, and it's basically talking about how they're bringing energy to like these areas in Africa that before had no sources of electricity. And so like they think it's going to be beneficial in many ways, like the fact that you're allowing these people to be more productive, and like not to say that they're not productive and not to be like stupidly sounding, but like to be able to access things that they weren't able to before.
Usually it's at the mercy of a company, and their sole thing is about making profit and sustaining their business. So if it's not really profitable for them to provide energy to an underprivileged area or an area that does not have energy, why would they?
And so, after a good hour of discussion, the event came to a close. At this point, we conducted the interviews.
I was able to learn and understand both the pros and cons of the matter and be able to assess the issue of the mining with a full rounded perspective.
I think people were like less scared to reveal what they actually thought about nuclear power. Like everyone wasn't scared to say like, no, I think it's a bad idea, or I think it's a good idea, we just need to be careful about the energy.
Although it can't be said that everyone agreed on the topic of nuclear power, the discussion itself proved why we need to talk about it. Because there's just so much to talk about.
We're just gonna talk about nuclear science.